New series, new city, same result for the Florida Panthers. This is NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. Your usual suspects joining you. And after watching Game 1 last night, Neil, it is going to be very difficult for a team to knock off the Florida Panthers in a series.
Yeah, it is going to be, and I've been saying that, though, for a long time. I don't see anybody doing it, including the West, whoever comes out of the Western side. But getting back to the Carolina series that I called in 7, I believe. I think that's what I said, Florida in 7. After last night, I'd like to go back and get a redo on that one. They outclassed Carolina, and Carolina outshot them. So Carolina threw everything they could, but it was a no contest.
I don't think you can bring your tickets back to the window after the series has started, so you're stuck with that pick there. So,
and so is Craig Button.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So in this game for lineups, Jalen Chatfield was out, and this is the second consecutive game he missed because he also was out for the final game against the Washington Capitals. And in that game, Alexander Nikishin was in as his replacement. But on this night, Rod Brind'Amour opted for Scott Morrow in his playoff debut. And this caught me by surprise because I thought certainly after his showing in Game 5 against Washington, Nikishin was going to be in there.
Yeah, I was surprised at that too, not knowing much about Morrow and how he would play in the playoffs, obviously. But last night was not a great night for him.
We'll get to that later as we sum up this game. But to start, I thought the Panthers had to withstand a little bit of pressure, a little bit of physicality. And once again, it's Sergei Bobrovsky. By the way, remember that $10 million a year contract that he signed that looked so awful just 2 years ago?
Yeah.
How's that looking now?
Well, it's looking great, and we said that even last year, but it was awful. The thing is we can't say now suddenly that those first years of that contract were good. They weren't. I have a friend down there that is a loyal season ticket holder who just bitched to me about this Bobrovsky coming in and how bad he was. If you remember that first or second year, the backup ended up playing more games than Bobrovsky. They didn't believe in him at all. He's another one of these cocoon guys, you know, like Corey Perry and others. Like, he's gotten better with age, like a fine wine.
And I bet your buddy would actually take him out and toast him with a glass of wine for the way he's played over the last few playoffs.
Well, let me tell you something. My buddy down there is a wine distributor. So he definitely would be able to take him out for a glass of wine.
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
Bobrovsky holds firm, and on the first power play of the game for the Panthers, it's Carter Verhaeghe. Backhand short side. The result is somewhat of a questionable penalty, a retaliatory type against Sebastian Aho against Anton Lundell. But this was something to look out for because entering the game, we knew all about the Carolina penalty killing. Regular season and playoffs, top of the charts. But heading into the series, the Panthers' road power play percentage was just under 37%. And they wound up going 2 for 3 on this night.
Yeah, and let's go back on the Verhaeghe goal, though. The puck went on its side, and Verhaeghe got it like a spatula and ended up being able to roof it because it got on its side, and it was a fortuitous thing that happened. So they get that goal. You go back and talk about the Aho retaliatory penalty. Lundell slashed the crap out of him and then cross-checked him, and then Aho came back and sort of gave him the arm around the head and the noogies type deal. And that's what the referee saw and gave him the penalty. And Rod Brind'Amour was just incensed over this because he watched the replay and he got a good chop in on Aho before Aho did that.
And a tick less than 4 minutes later, it didn't get any better because after a near miss by the Hurricanes, Jordan Staal mishandles the puck in his own end. It's a turnover. Evan Rodriguez to Aaron Ekblad, high glove from the left wing circle, and the aforementioned Scott Morrow screening his goaltender.
Yeah, and give the credit, though, to Ekblad, who read the play and came down deep into the offensive zone. Ekblad has been really good offensive defenseman during these playoffs. And the brilliance is they got Seth Jones as well. So now they got two of them coming at you. But I got to say, Ekblad has been a better offensive defenseman in the playoffs than he is during the regular season.
Bobrovsky again, last 5 minutes of the first period, stops Aho on a breakaway, and then Seth Jarvis soon after that. But right before the end of the period, a little bit of hope for the Canes. Aho directs Jarvis's feet in with his skate with 15 seconds left in the first period. And I believe that goal was good. I think you're going to agree with me on that also.
Yeah, it definitely was good. It was a good play by Aho. Aho did it on purpose, but he didn't kick it.
Right.
He directed it with his skate, and you're allowed to do that.
There's always that optic, though, when you watch it in real speed that it's a kick. And then when you watch it on replay and you see that the puck usually hits the skate first, and then the follow-through motion comes after that.
Yeah, and let's talk for 2 seconds about this whole thing about kicking the puck into the net. That's always been the rule. You're not allowed to kick the puck into the net. Why has that been a rule all these many decades? The reason is because you're wearing hockey skates, yes. And you don't want people kicking things with skates on. So they said you can't kick the puck into the net so that nobody would try to do that. And now they've gotten to, well, you can't have the kicking motion. It can go in off of your skate, but you can't have a kicking motion. Dave Jackson said the other day, I think it was him that said, I wish they just let them kick it because then, it would be easier than this no kicking motion. It's weird, isn't it? Because now in 2025, is it really that dangerous if somebody kicked the puck into the net? Like, how many times do you get to do a soccer kick in hockey? You can't, but those are the rules, and we move on.
Personally, I still rather see goals going in off sticks, but certainly the directing rule, perfectly fine by me. And I'm not on the rules committee, so nobody's paying attention to what I have to say anyway. So,
well, you should be.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So in the second period, good early chances by Carolina trying to tie the game. However, at the 3:33 mark, Thomas Nosek to Nico Mikkola, he comes down and a really good-looking pass to A.J. Greer to make it 3-1. We've talked about the third line, the second line, the first line. Fourth line for Florida on this night, even though Mikkola's a defenseman, fourth line, very strong in this game.
Mikkola being 6'5", is he 6'6"? What is he? He's
I think
very
he's like 6'13".
No, but in all seriousness, he is a large human.
Yeah, he
and
is.
very, very tall. And what he did on this play was he reached as far out as he could and swung a backhand pass between the goaltender and the defender that was perfectly placed for Greer, that he could go onto the short side with that play. It was an excellent goal, real good play by Mikkola, and a great finish by Greer.
Of the first three goals, I didn't see any that Freddie Anderson could be faulted on.
No, I don't think he could be faulted on any of those three. It would be great, though, if he did what Bobrovsky did already a couple of times by this point, which was make game-saving stops. Like stopping Sebastian Aho on that breakaway was a huge moment.
And he had more moments because before the midway point of the period, he made a fine stop from close in on Jack Roslovic without a stick. And then later in the second, during a Carolina power play, strong again. And at this point, you could see Carolina's frustration starting to set in because they were making it a point, particularly Andrei Svechnikov, of bumping Bobrovsky in that Florida crease.
Oh, absolutely. I think there was one time that it was clearly obvious that Svechnikov leaned into Bobrovsky as he went through the crease. If they start doing that, Florida's going to have to take matters into their own hands. They're not going to be, they can't let them do that. I mean, they're going to have to they're going to pay a penance for doing that.
Yeah. Florida comes into every game with a chip on their shoulder. And I think the last thing that the Hurricanes are going to want to do is piss them off, which I think took place there. It took place at the end of the game, which we will get to. But first, we're going to sidebar for a second. You were drafted.
Yep.
You played high-end hockey. But once you couldn't make it to the NHL, did you ever think of becoming an official?
No, never did. Because I had friends that were in scouting, so that's where I ended up wanting to go.
Is it me, or does it just appear that throughout the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, plus 1 game, the amount of casualties suffered by officials is abnormally high this year?
Oh, I don't know how they don't get hurt all the time because of the velocity of the puck and the way the players are playing with reckless abandon.
And sticks.
Yeah.
Right?
And we've already talked about this, Vic. There's 3 teams on the ice. There's 5 skaters for Carolina. There's 5 skaters for Florida. And there's 4 skaters for the Stripes. Yeah. So you think about that. There's a lot of officials out there. 3 is a lot. This is going to sound stupid, but 3 are a lot less than 4. When they had 1 referee and 2 linesmen, That was a lot less than having 2 referees and 2 linesmen.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. And as we know, after over a century of NHL hockey, the dimensions of the rink still haven't changed. And the players have gotten bigger and faster and stronger. And as a result, referee Kelly Sutherland took a couple of shots. I think one with a puck, one where he was hit. And as a result, in the third period, Garrett Rank comes out of the bullpen for the second consecutive game because, remember, he replaced Chris Rooney in Toronto in Game 7. So that ends that sidebar. And for the Panthers, they had not gotten a shot on goal for 15 minutes and 14 seconds going back to the second period. And sure enough, at the 6:08 mark of the third period, it's Sam Bennett shooting through a screen on a power play to up the lead to 4-1. And this power play came as a result of Scott Morrow being in the penalty box for a delay game penalty for sending the puck over the glass.
I thought that the Sam Bennett goal was just a shot. I'd have to go back and look at it a number of times so that I can give Freddie Anderson the benefit of the doubt. But it looked to me like that's one that he should have had.
So to put a bow on Morrow for the night, he screens his goalie on the second goal. He's in the penalty box for the fourth goal. Ends up with a -3. So if Chatfield can't go in Game 2, be interesting to see whether or not Rod Brind'Amour goes back to Nikishin.
You might want to say, will Rod Brind'Amour go back tomorrow? Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. I got it.
Tomorrow. There's both. Okay. It's a play on words. There's tomorrow and tomorrow.
Why don't you just start singing Annie here? So then this got a little bit more testy because Brad Marchand, who's, of course, no stranger to mixing things up, took a run at Shane Gostisbehere. I mean, it was a pretty good run, but I thought he just kind of grazed him. And then Gostisbehere was looking for his revenge because from his own blue line, he shot the puck directly at Marchand, who was no more than 10 feet away from him. And this really set off some stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, then those two got together, and give Gostisbehere credit. I never seen him as that kind of a player, mix-it-up player. I mean, he's been a great offensive defenseman since he broke in with Philadelphia. And, yeah, he shot it. It was a wrist shot. It wasn't a slap shot, but he shot it right at him, for sure. There was no doubt.
And could potentially face supplemental discipline from the league, probably coming in some form of a fine, which we've seen pretty commonplace thus far.
what was the guy earlier in the season that shot the?
It was Mikkola who shot the puck down against the Canadians. He shot it right past Savard's head in a 2-goal game with 1 second left.
Yeah, and see, we've never seen anything from Mikkola since then of this kind of nonsense, right? I mean, Mikkola's not that type either. So, let's see what the Department of Player Safety has to say about that.
Eetu Luostarinen and Jackson Blake close out the scoring. Shots on goal in this game, 33-20, Carolina. Attempts, 78-46, Carolina. 2 years ago, the Hurricanes outshot the Panthers in that 4-game sweep, 174-127. And this is almost starting to have some of those overtones, even though this game was dominated far more on the score sheet by the Panthers than those 4 one-goal games that took place 2 years ago.
That was a surprising sweep by Florida. Nothing surprises you now about Florida, right? Nothing. I got to say that I got it wrong going into last night's game. I think you got it wrong. I think most people got it wrong. We thought because of the lack of rest that Florida had, they had to fly from Toronto right down probably the day after the game. I don't think they chartered out that night, that they beat Toronto out in Game 7. And I spoke to Colin Campbell at the league office about this. He says they probably only had the afternoon of the day in between to meet with the players, run some videos, show them the books, show them the information that they'd collected. By the way, Gregory Campbell, Colin's son, is the one that preps the team for each coming opponent. He's the assistant GM in Florida to Bill Zito, but his job is NHL scouting and prepping the Panthers before they play the next opponent. But anyway, he knows, and I know, and especially Mr. TV, that these schedules are done for TV, because anybody with common sense would have had the West start before the East when the East finished after the West. But they didn't do that. My point here is, in this diatribe, is that we all thought that Carolina would jump on a tired Panther squad and probably take Game 1, but it wasn't even close.
How about this stat? This was a beauty that came up at the end of the game. 13 straight losses for Carolina in the conference finals going back to Game 7 in 2006 against Buffalo. That was the year that they won the Stanley Cup. Is it harder to lose 13 straight conference final games or Final Four games, or 12 straight in the Stanley Cup finals as the St. Louis Blues did from 68 through 70?
Well, that 12 straight St. Louis last night, they weren't in the same league at that point. They literally weren't from the same league back then. No, it's amazing. And, we give the Carolina Hurricanes and Rod Brind'Amour a lot of love. We like the Hurricanes. We love the way they play. We give them a lot of accolades. And Rod Brind'Amour, I don't know that there's a better coach in the league than Rod Brind'Amour. But I guess that as these things go on, your warts show up more and more, and we'll see what Carolina can do in Game 2. They've already lost home ice. And by the way, I had to explain that one to Margaret today, that they lost home ice. She said, "What do you mean? That was only Game 1. I said, well, if you lose at home, you've only got 3 home games left. And the other team has 3 home games left. So if each of you win all your home games, you lose a series."
That's more simple math that we're really good at.
Yeah, and that's how you lose home ice advantage if you lose Game 1 or Game 2.
And Game 2 will be Thursday, 8 o'clock on TNT. Before we hit Wednesday's first game between Edmonton and Dallas, remember that Ray Whitney was part of our This Day in History in our last Cup date?
I do.
Do you know what significance he actually has as we segue into Edmonton and Dallas?
I don't know what you're thinking, no.
Well, I'm not thinking. I actually researched it. I just had a whim to look something up. And Ray Whitney is the only player that has played for the Oilers, Panthers, Hurricanes, and Stars. the final four
Wow.
teams.
Look at that trivia.
How's that
That
for
is
some
great.
pointless data?
Can you name the only player who's played for all four conference final teams in 2025?
That's right. People are going to go scrambling to the websites and record books now, and he played 9 games for the Oilers in 97-98, and then was claimed off waivers by Florida, played parts of 4 seasons there, played 5 seasons with the Hurricanes, won the Stanley Cup with them in 2006, and wrapped up his career from 2012 to 2014 in Dallas. So,
And how many games did he play for the Stars?
played 2 full seasons.
2 full seasons. So the only team that he played just a coffee cup with was Edmonton.
Correct. And that's why these little nuggets manage to slip in there, because there's usually one team in there that, they play like a pittance of games. So.
Yeah. Well, but he's still been on all 4, and that's a great piece of trivia. I'll use that later today, to the people down south here who have no idea what hockey is.
Perfect. I'm sure they'll say, who's Ray Whitney? We don't know. So.
Yeah, well, who are the Edmonton Oilers?
Well, we're going to tell you, because they open their series in Dallas, Game 1, 8 o'clock ESPN. Oilers have been off for a week, but they did get some good news that Matthias Ekholm skated on Monday, and he has been upgraded to day-to-day. He is expected to miss Games 1 and 2, but at the same time, he's not yet been ruled 100% out for the opening game of the series. He last played on April 11th.
You know how important he was to that team last year in the playoffs, and he's a good player. Ken Holland snuck him away from Nashville at some point, and boy, that's paid dividends for the Edmonton Oilers.
Stars' last game was Saturday when they polished off the Winnipeg Jets. I'm looking for them to start fast, start hard, and get some of their big guns going up front, which they're going to need, because I think that if the Dallas top scorers and the Edmonton top scorers do what they're supposed to do, I think the secondary scoring and the overall defensive play and goaltending will be the difference in this series for Dallas.
Yeah, and holding 97 and 29 to human standards.
Do they have names? We keep referring to them by numbers.
I think they're called McDavid and or Dreisaitl.
You got anything else to add on what you expect this evening?
No, I do expect the Dallas Stars to put out a great performance. I think that they've got a raucous crowd. The Dallas Stars are going to jump right in, and the Oilers are going to have to feel their way through. And I expect some physicality in Game 1, as you do in every series with Game 1. It's message sending and things like that. But I would expect Dallas to win this game. Now, tomorrow when we come on here and say that Edmonton actually won, because I predicted Dallas would win, just like I predicted Carolina would win, so therefore Florida won. I'm basically handing the game tonight to Edmonton by predicting that Dallas will win.
And there you go, costing us listeners again, because they're all leaving to put their wagers down.
Yes, and I'm costing them all money.
Some news from around the league. Bruins GM Don Sweeney extended 2 years to 27-28.
Which means he's got 3 years to go on his contract, because that's a 2-year extension. And if you want to start with Don Sweeney's peculiar season, he does not get Linus Ullmark. He trades him to the Ottawa Senators and says to Swayman, basically the organization says to Swayman, you're our guy. But they forgot one thing. They didn't have Swayman signed. Mm-hmm. So now Swayman sat out, missed all of training camp, and he still got his 8x8 or whatever it was, but comes in and he's got to wear diapers all year because he's crapping the bed most of the time. So then they turn around and with a slow start, they fire the coach that got them the record season just a season before, set all these records in the NHL, They fire him, who, by the way, immediately gets picked up by St. Louis. And how did that turn out? Oh, St. Louis made the playoffs. St. Louis pushed the President's Trophy team to 7 games, winning every game at home. Anyway, go back to the Bruins. They end up having a miserable season, basically trading everybody they can trade, including the captain, Brad Marchand, who you got to trade a guy when he's got no time left on his contract, because the worst thing you're going to have as a manager is a guy walk away. Don Sweeney, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been extended. I'm just saying he didn't have a very good season. He had a bad year this year, and he got rewarded with a new contract.
In Toronto, where about a year and a half ago, one of our first shows, we said nobody sucks the air out of the room like the Maple Leafs. Well, we're going to do a little bit more of that here. Anthony Stolarz did confirm that he suffered a concussion in Game 1 against the Panthers. You remember that not only did he take the elbow from Sam Bennett in the crease, but before that, he had taken a shot to the face mask. So he confirmed, indeed, that he was concussed. Meanwhile, Auston Matthews did not specify his ailment, but he did confirm that something happened to him during training camp and it hampered him the entire season. And you remember that he spent some time in Germany trying to get a remedy.
And I wonder also if he banged his knee when he got to get up off the bus being one of the passengers. Because he said there were too many passengers and he was driving the bus, I think, because if there was ever a passenger in that series, it was him.
So let's extend that to Mitch Marner, who will now wait to decide what his future is going to be. I think he's going to test the free agent market for sure. But if I'm Toronto, do I really want to re-sign him? I mean, after 9 years, we know what we're getting. We're getting a 95 to 100 point player in the regular season and a guy that, as the playoffs move forward, kind of disappears, becomes a non-factor. And from my seat, I think this is a guy that will be better served going to another club where he is not expected to be one of the guys. And you remember Chris Drury and Scott Gomez signed with the Rangers?
Of course,
and everybody was looking at, boy, these were great support players in Colorado and New Jersey, respectively, and now they're going to be leaders on the Rangers. Well, you know what? They weren't. They weren't those frontline guys. And I don't think Marner is that frontline guy to lead a team forward. But I think he would do great on a team where he is not being looked upon to be the guy.
But, Vic, I don't think he's being looked upon to be the guy in Toronto. He was their leading scorer. He's a 100-point guy, but he wasn't the guy. I think Matthews is the guy, and I think that Nylander is the second guy, although Nylander doesn't have as complete a game as Marner has. The thing is Marner's leaving. So there's going to be another number 16 in a Toronto jersey next year or the year after.
Yeah.
But Marner's not going to sign back with the Leafs. If he was going to, he would have by now. Right? They know he doesn't want to stay. They asked him if he would let go of his no trade to go to Carolina for Rantanen, and he said no. Yeah. He wanted to be with the Leafs, but he's going to leave. You could tell by what he said at the breakups that, we'll see what happens. Well, every other player on every team around the league on breakup day, when they're asked, do you want to stay with this team? They all say, yeah, this is my favorite. This is where I really want to be. Even if they don't want to be, they still say that. What did Marner say? Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So he doesn't like playing in his hometown. He doesn't like how the fans and people and media treat him. He should get to a place like Carolina where, you can go out and get groceries and do things and nobody's going to come up to you with nasty words and stuff. In Toronto, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So he should go to one of those other markets where he'll get huge money, but he is not going to be the guy or the top guy on a Stanley Cup contender. He's just not going to be. You're going to have an Auston Matthews type guy, a Nate McKinnon. Yeah. I mean, Colorado, imagine if Colorado got this guy, how good they would be.
That's my point.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. From the management standpoint I'm sorry, but it is a bit of a disaster when a player of that quality walks away and you get nothing because, he had a no trade, he had a no move, he had a no whatever, and they couldn't do anything about it. So you can't blame Tree Living because Tree Living couldn't trade him. He had a no trade, but it still is a disaster. I mean, you've got to try to find a way around that. I think we had 2 GMs involved in the Mitch Marner, or maybe 3, saga from Lou Lamoriello and then Kyle Dubas to now Brad Treliving. He's going to leave. Somebody's going to get a great player, and he's going to get all that hometown pressure taken off of him.
And that wraps up Leafs saga for today. Other injury news, Josh Morrissey, defenseman for Winnipeg, will not need surgery for the left leg injury he suffered in Game 6 against Dallas when he got tangled up with Mikko Rantanen, but he did confirm that the injury would have kept him out for the remainder of the playoffs should the Jets have advanced. And Luke Schenn confirmed that he played through the playoffs with cracked ribs and injuries sustained delivering a hit in Game 2 of the St. Louis series.
And just to beat on this Maple Leaf saga, Luke Schenn was a former pretty high first-round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Didn't work out in Toronto, but man, he's been in the league for a century now.
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
One final note, defenseman Nick Jensen for Ottawa had surgery for a lower body injury. He played through this injury during the entire second half of the season, but the Senators are hopeful he will be ready for the start of training camp. So with that, which voice are you bringing forth today?
Well, you tell me when you hear it.
Go ahead.
This day in Stanley Cup history.
All right, that's more Marv Albert than Don Pardo. And on this date, May 21st in 1979, the Montreal Canadiens win their 4th consecutive Stanley Cup, beating the Rangers 4-1 in Game 5. Jacques Lemaire with a pair of second-period goals to put that one on ice. That was also the last game for both Yvan Cournoyer and Ken Dryden, and the end of one of the great dynasties in NHL history.
And the beginning of another. And, of course, on May 24th, you'll hear all about that.
We will. It will be Doormat Dynasty, celebrating the 45th anniversary of the New York Islanders' first Stanley Cup championship. So please join us as we were joined by Denny Potvin, John Tonelli, and Ken Morrow. So certainly looking forward to that. Don't forget to subscribe, like us on Facebook, and our website is NHLWraparound.com. Neil and I will return Thursday as we look back at Game 1 of the Oilers and Stars and look ahead to Game 2 of Panthers Hurricanes. Take care.